If you have a Bible and you like to follow along, please turn in it to Genesis, the first book of the Bible, chapter 45. This is where we will spend our time today. One of the aspects of living in this world that I just never really get used to is the fact of, well, very much like what has happened this weekend. I remember speaking to Brad yesterday at the funeral, and there's a curious thing about life in that we're trapped in time. Time flows and we're just caught up in that turbulence, that movement. And there we are at a funeral where, it's such a final thing. I did the graveside and I'm looking at Michelle and her sons and I'm just thinking there is nothing I can say here that's going to change this situation and take the sting out of it. And so much of life is like that. We come to things that hurt. We also come to things that are really good. And there's just this constant back and forth that never seems to relent. And those things that are good, I don't know about how it is for you, but when I come to something like a beautiful sunset or a piece of music that really inspires me, or a moment with a friend of mine or with my wife or with my family, I want to go in there and stay. I don't want to leave. I don't want to go back. And then, of course, Monday morning shows up for all of us in one way or another. So let's take a look at this text and see if we can make some sense of this in some way. And I'm going to be looking at the life of Joseph, chapter 45 of Genesis, and I'll begin reading in verse 1. Joseph couldn't control himself before all those who stood before him, and he cried, "Cause everyone to leave the room." So no one else stood with Joseph while he made himself known to his brothers who were standing in front of him. Joseph wept aloud, and the Egyptians heard it. The whole house of Pharaoh heard Joseph weeping. Joseph said to his brother, "I'm Joseph. Does my father still live?" His brothers couldn't answer him, for they were terrified in Joseph's presence. Joseph said to his brother, "Come near to me, please." So they all came near, and he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. Now don't be grieved, don't be angry with yourselves that you sold me here, for God sent me here to preserve life. For these 2 years this famine has been in the land, and there are 5 years yet to go, in which there will be no plowing and no harvesting. God sent me before you to preserve a remnant in the earth, and to save you alive by a great deliverance. So now it wasn't you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to the Pharaoh, lord over all of his house, and ruler over all of Egypt. Hurry, go up to my father and tell him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord over all of Egypt. Come down to me here and don't wait. You'll dwell in the land of Goshen. You'll be near me, you and your children, your children's children, your flocks, your herds, and all that you have, and there I will nourish you, for there are yet 5 years of famine, lest you come to poverty, you and your whole household, and all that you have. Behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth who speaks these things to you. You shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and all that you've seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father here." Joseph fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on Joseph's neck. Joseph kissed all of his brothers and wept on them, and after that his brothers spoke with him. It's a very tender story, and I need to give a little bit of background here just so that we have some context for all of this. And I want to say something about Joseph before we begin here. Joseph, for me, is one of the greatest characters in all of the Old Testament. Because here's a person that if Jackson were a toddler, I would leave Jackson with Joseph for a month and not worry about Jackson's safety or anything else. And I would also be happy that he would hear things from Joseph that reflected my values, or mine reflected Joseph's. Joseph is in the Old Testament almost like a Christ in the way in which he lives. Now, think through Joseph's life and all that happens to him. I am sure that Joseph, as a human being, came to points in his life where he said, "What's going on? Why am I here? Why is any of this happening to me? And he's going to question. He's going to say, where is God in all this? I know he did because of the things that happened to him. I mean, his trials, he goes from being threatened with death to helplessness to enslavement to imprisonment. I mean, it's a terrible period of his life. And these trials come to him not because of evil necessarily, but really, and this is the way it is, this is what separates him from Christ. These trials come to him because of his own flaws and the difficulties in his family. His brothers saw that Jacob loved Joseph more than all the rest. They saw it. It says it in the text. Go back and read. You can read the whole of Joseph's life in just a few minutes, and that's exactly what it says. And they were so angry in Genesis 37 that they could not even speak peaceably to Joseph as their brother, because they knew that their father loved him more than all the rest. So they wanted to kill him. That's what they decided. This is the only way we can solve this problem. Let's kill him. So they got him, took him off when they were out herding sheep, said, let's kill him. Reuben stopped them. One of the brothers said, we can't do that. This is our brother. We can't just kill him. Okay, well, a new plan. Let's take his coat, kill a lamb, soak it in some blood, throw him in a hole. There's no food, no water down there. You might as well just go ahead and kill him because he's going to die down there. They do that, and then they suddenly have another brainstorm. An Arab caravan comes by. And they say, we know what we'll do. Not only will we get rid of him, we'll actually make a profit. We'll sell him to him. So that's what they did. They sold Joseph to this caravan. He becomes a product of profit for them. Not only have we gotten rid of him, but we got some change in our pocket to go with it. Well, the Arabs, they see Joseph as a commodity. They take him to Egypt and sell him to a rich person's house, a guy named Potiphar. He goes into Potiphar's house. God blesses Joseph. Throughout his life, God had blessed him. This is one of the things, actually, the blessing of Joseph that got him into some trouble, really, because he was blessed with the ability to interpret dreams. His brothers wanted to get rid of the dreamer, which is why he was where he was. So he goes into Potiphar's house. He's got so much integrity. He's got such this Christ-like life that he lives. Potiphar puts him in charge of everything. Well, Potiphar's got a problem that Potiphar doesn't even know is a problem yet. Potiphar's wife looks at Potiphar and says, you know, he doesn't look as good as he did when I married him. He does not appeal to me like he did when we said I do. But she looks at Joseph and thinks, this is a nice looking fellow. And so she starts to hit on Joseph. Now, he's a slave in the house. And did you know, morally speaking, at that time in history, Joseph could have taken advantage of that situation, and other than Potiphar being angry, it would have meant nothing in terms of the ethos of the culture at that time. He could have done that. Nobody would have thought anything of it. But Joseph said no, because of the integrity he had before God. He knew this was wrong, and he knew that Potiphar was trusting Joseph with everything he had, including his wife. So finally, Joseph suddenly finds himself alone in the house. Potiphar's wife makes the stab to try to get him to go and have out with him. And she grabs his cloak, and Joseph runs away, and the cloak comes off. Well, she takes the cloak and shows it to the servants and shows it to her husband and says, look at what this Hebrew's doing. He's tried to rape me. Well, Potiphar, of course, does the only right thing to do is throw him into prison. So he spends time in prison. He stays there until the Pharaoh, and this is Rex Lex. They just did whatever they wanted. The king decided that there was a baker and there was a cupbearer. And these two guys had somehow disappointed the Pharaoh. So the Pharaoh says, into the prison you go. Can you imagine being an employee like that? I mean, to have to worry, not only are you going to get fired, but you're going to get thrown in jail if you don't measure up. So he throws them in jail. They get into the prison. Joseph is there. Joseph's integrity is such that the keepers of the prisoners put Joseph in charge of the prison. So the cupbearer and the baker both have a dream. And Joseph, they don't know, what does the dream mean? Joseph says, I serve a God who can interpret your dream. He interprets the dreams, and those two dreams turn out exactly as Joseph had said to both of them. One of them got out of prison, and went back to this job as the cupbearer. The other one got his head taken off, both of which were prophesied by Joseph from the dreams. Well, the cupbearer who goes back to Pharaoh, Joseph said, you know, when you get back to Pharaoh, you might remind him that I'm here and I shouldn't be here. Isn't that the general inmate's story? I'm not supposed to be in prison. I didn't do it. So the cupbearer, I'm sure he wasn't being mean. He just goes back to Pharaoh and goes back to his gig for 2 more years. 2 more years. Now, at this point, this trajectory, which you can read in about 15 minutes, comprises 13 years of Joseph's life. This is not something that just took place over a day or two. Easy to read in 5 minutes. Joseph was in that prison for a long time. I look at it and I say, and then of course, what happens? Joseph interprets that dream, and Pharaoh has 2 dreams, 2 of them, and he doesn't know what to make of them. He recognizes they're significant, but he says, I don't know how to interpret them. And the cupbearer then remembers, oh, there's a guy in prison there, Hebrew. He can interpret dreams. Why don't you call him out? So they bring Joseph before the Pharaoh. Joseph interprets the 2 dreams. They're the same dream, describing the same future. And Pharaoh then puts Joseph in charge of the whole of Egypt to solve this problem about 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. And what can we do about that? And Joseph gets the gig. He's put his second in command. Think of the magnitude of this in some ways. I thought about it for the modern era. What would it be like if somebody who was a believer went to the president and said, I've had this dream? Or the president has a dream, and then the person or woman says, I know the interpretation of it, and they interpret that dream, and it changes the whole trajectory of the nation. That's the significance here of this. And Joseph's interpretation of these 2 dreams changed the trajectory for that whole land of Egypt and the land surrounding too, not just Egypt. Man. And as I looked at the story, I thought to myself, I wonder what would have happened if the brothers had come to Joseph while he was in prison instead of coming when they did. I wonder if, from their point of view, we're rid of him. But I just wonder what would have happened. Would Joseph have been as forgiving of his brothers if they'd have showed up while he was in the prison? I don't know. I'd say it would be kind of hard. Would they have been sympathetic then to Joseph's plight? Look at what we've done to him. He's in this Egyptian prison. I don't know. But I read something in this that really strikes me as potent, and I want to share it with you. It's from Jesus himself. You know this text. Jesus says, I'm telling every one of you who hears me, Jesus says, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. To the one who strikes you on one cheek, offer them the other cheek also. To the one who takes away your cloak, do not refuse to give them your coat as well. Give to everyone who asks of you, and don't ask of anyone who takes something away to have it back. As you would like people to do to you, you do exactly to them. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. How hard it is to live a life like that. Becky and I have movie night on Fridays and Saturdays. And I like movies where you've got the hero who dashes out, gets mistreated for half the movie, then spends the second half of the movie cracking heads and taking names. I love that. And I'm all thrilled with excitement while I watch each one of these bad people get knocked off or whatever they do to them. But that's not the kind of hero that Jesus is talking about here at all. Now, where does this desire in Joseph come from to be like that? And do we, as people, have that same desire in ourselves to be like that? I wonder if Jesus were to come in here, and I believe he is in here, but let's say he walked in so that everybody could see, and he looked at each one of us here today and said, what do you really want in life? What would we say to him? What kind of things would we say If Jesus asks us that question, what do you want in life? I could think of, I want to be a missionary, or I want to be somebody who serves the poor, or I want to be, we'll think of all kinds of pious things that we might like to do. But that's not how we really think, really. If somebody asks us, like you and I talking, what do you want in life? We might have a list of things that we might like to see, but would we want to see a life lived like this? That Jesus gives us to live, and that Joseph is an exemplar. I would say that what we seek in life a lot of times is not at all what God wants for us. And that's a hard thing to think about for me. Our life courses, all of us in this room. Think about those who've lost people in the last few weeks. There are things that come into their lives that I'm sure they did not want. Things come into every life in this room. Things that we would never choose to say, I would like to see that happen. Now, this period of Joseph's life, you read it in a few minutes, we're talking about 18 to 25 years total. Through the whole period of this famine. But when Joseph is in Pharaoh's court making these decisions, it's a 13-year period from the time that they throw him in the hole until the time in which he's in Pharaoh's court making these decisions. That's a long time. Can you imagine? When we go through things that are painful, take anything you want to take, a loss of a job, or a physical ailment that causes pain, or worry over a spouse, or worry over a child, and these moments just get so stretched out. Every minute feels like hours. It's kind of like what somebody asked Einstein, how is time relative? He said, that's easy. He said, if you're sitting next to your favorite girlfriend with your arm around her for 2 hours, that feels like no time at all. If you're sitting on a hot burning piece of metal for 10 seconds, it feels like forever. And that perspective is, think of Joseph. Can you imagine? There are times in all of our lives where we come to a place where we say, why am I left here by God? I've been in so many nursing homes where these people look to me like I've got the answer, and they say, why is God leaving me here like this? And I can't imagine that Joseph didn't think that very thing. He knows he didn't do anything wrong, but he's in an Egyptian prison. Egyptian prison in the ancient world was nothing more than a place where someone was housed until they were being punished. Prison was bad because no cable, no soft place to rest, no latrine, no plumbing. You're just in this room, and back then a prison might just be a cave where they close up the opening. The keepers of prisons, who wants that gig? Can you imagine? I mean, you're in this, you got to go and take food and water to these filthy people who are in this filthy hole with all of their personal filth. I wouldn't want that gig. It's kind of like being somebody who has to shovel the manure out of the pigsty. So you can imagine that the prison keepers in the ancient world were not the nicest people in the world. They didn't care how good or bad it went for you while you were in that prison. Joseph had to come to moments in this period of his life where he was just thinking, what in the world am I doing here? And I'm crying out to God, and tomorrow I wake up and I'm still here. And those days just turn into years. Joseph knew that he was in a period of suffering that he did not deserve. He did not deserve it. Now that just seems so much to me like life for many of us in many instances. We get news that we didn't expect about a job, or we get news from a doctor that tells us now we've got something that is very dire. We didn't deserve it. It just showed up. We didn't ask for it. What did we do that this pain should come? But this is where the beauty, to me, of following Jesus becomes so important. And you know, yesterday's events brought this home to me so powerfully. Because in the end, we who are sitting here today, there's no matter what we face, there's hope. There's always hope. That ultimately, and sometimes the hope is even for some good things here on earth, right? Look at Joseph. He got some good things on earth because he never gave up on waiting on God. But those things that come to us here on this earth that are good are fleeting. They are fleeting. We cannot enter into them. We're there and they come and they go. And people all over, we see people chasing them. They make their whole life course chasing these things here in this world that they think will make them happy. Chasing happiness, which is a terrible goal to have. Those things which God gives us to legitimately enjoy, and we drink them in, but they pass. They pass. God does. How many people's lives are you and I going to read about who have everything that we could possibly imagine in material goods and lifestyle, and yet they are suicidally unhappy? What's going on? Somehow when God allows suffering in your life and mine, He is entrusting us to carry something for Him. He's entrusting us to carry something for a period of time in our lives. And He's giving us an opportunity in those moments to be merely faithful. That's all He's asking. That's all He's ever asking. Be merely faithful. That's exactly what Joseph did. If you look at that trajectory, all the things he faced, all he ever was, from the time they threw him in the hole until the time he was Pharaoh's second in command, he was just merely faithful. And I'll tell you, one of the beauties of being a follower of Jesus is there is a deep, deep satisfaction that is greater than those fleeting things that we might enjoy in being merely faithful. Just merely faithful. I don't know where everybody